I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. A minus 31 free throw discrepancy. And I might be able to understand it if we were just chucking threes, but we're not. We're attacking the rim. And the disrespect right now for our team has been pretty unbelievable. So it's disappointing.
What's happening between the Fever and the Las Vegas Aces can't even be called a basketball series. It feels more like a scripted heist unfolding on live national television. Indiana shocked the entire league by snatching Game 1 in Vegas, but everything changed immediately afterward. The Aces didn't just respond with skill or tactical adjustments. They had referees backing them up, blowing whistles so uneven that the matchup hardly looked like real competition anymore. Coach Stephanie White refused to stay silent. In one of the rawest and most emotional post-game interviews of her career, she openly demanded a full-scale league-wide investigation into the credibility of WNBA officiating. Fans at Gainbridge witnessed it firsthand. Social media erupted with outrage, and even the official box score exposed the truth. The Aces weren't outplaying Indiana. They were being handed victories on a silver platter. The saddest part is how those phantom whistles completely overshadowed the Fever's grit, resilience, teamwork, and pure fighting heart they poured onto the floor every single night. Tell us in the comments if you believe the WNBA will finally step up and clean this growing mess once and for all.
Disappointing, that it doesn't go both ways, or it hasn't gone both ways. But we also can't allow that to consume us, right? Like, we've got to be able to play through that. We've got to be able to control the things that we can control.
Let's set the record straight. This wasn't the first time Indiana found themselves battling against two opponents at once. The players wearing Las Vegas jerseys and the referees clutching their whistles. From the opening moments, it was crystal clear which side the favoritism leaned toward. Game 1 revealed the entire blueprint. Whenever the Aces struggled to create any offensive flow, they simply lived at the free throw line to crawl back into the contest. On the other side, Indiana's tough, disciplined, and physical defense, the kind that should have been praised, mysteriously turned into foul trouble whenever the referees decided it was convenient. The Aces could shove with elbows and get away with it, while the Fever were whistled for simply standing too close or even breathing near a defender. That kind of double standard wasn't hidden at all. It was glaring, screaming loudly for anyone who actually paid attention to the game.
Steph, why don't you think you were able to find any flow, and when that was the case, what are you trying to do to jumpstart things, maybe on the defense?
Well, it's hard for us to find flow when there's a foul call every 10 seconds. I mean, it just really is. And when they're at the free throw line, we can't get up and down the floor. And that's a challenge. They were much more aggressive and physical defensively. We didn't counter that with our off-ball actions or with our back cuts. So they took us out of our comfort zone. I mean, offense is about rhythm, it's about timing, it's about spacing. We allowed them to do that, and they kept us from doing it.
By the time Game 2 rolled around, the truth was impossible to ignore. The whistles weren't just showing up here and there. They were controlling the tempo, dragging Indiana out of rhythm over and over again. Then came Game 3, where the bias had grown so blatant it became a towering wall the Fever simply couldn't climb. The moment that captured it all unfolded in the third quarter. Aaliyah Boston, Indiana's defensive anchor and emotional leader, contested a questionable foul call on Jackie Young. Immediately, Coach Stephanie White signaled for a review. The bench stood ready, and fans across the arena held their breath. But the officials acted as if nothing had even happened. They outright refused to acknowledge the review request. Just seconds later, Chelsea Gray drilled a momentum-shifting three-pointer, turning the entire game upside down in a flash.
Asia Wilson is 1 for 12 as a foul is called on Boston, and that will be number 2 on Aaliyah Boston.
You saw Indiana picking up full court pressure defensively, and if you're Aaliyah Boston, that's the one spot on the floor you do not want to get a foul called.
And Stephanie White is trying to challenge it and did not call the timeout in time. Gray in the corner. Connect!
What should have remained a hard-earned Indiana lead was stripped away, not by sharp Vegas execution, but by a controversial call the referees refused to even review. The Gainbridge crowd exploded in disbelief, their cheers instantly transforming into a storm of boos, and raw fury. Within minutes, clips of the sequence flooded social media, sparking outrage as fans and analysts alike pointed to that very moment as undeniable evidence of rigging. And those replays exposed more than a single missed review. They uncovered a disturbing pattern of flops, elbows, and cheap shots from the aces that somehow remained magically invisible to the officials' eyes.
2-minute recap from last night. So A'ja Wilson pushes Howard in the back. Howard pushes her in the back. It's a foul on Howard. Look at this. Aaliyah Boston gets totally fouled by Alyssa Smith. Like, it's obvious, but no call. And then A'ja Wilson gets the call for not half as much. And then Alyssa Smith gets the call for not even getting touched. Here's a replay just to prove it to you. Yep, didn't get touched.
That was the breaking point, when it stopped looking like simple oversight and started resembling a clear, calculated agenda. Roll the tape, and it's obvious. A'ja Wilson bulldozed straight through Aaliyah Boston with her shoulders lowered like a fullback, and the play just carried on as if nothing happened. Indiana defenders were shoved, knocked to the floor, yet the whistles stayed silent. But on the other end, if a Fever player so much as grazed a jersey or brushed an arm, the officials blew the whistle like they had just committed a crime. This wasn't Vegas outclassing Indiana with superior talent or strategy. It was referees handing the Aces lifelines again and again until the scoreboard inevitably tilted in their favor.
Follow it up by Lexi Hull getting called for the foul.
I thought it was egregious, honestly. I mean, I thought it was obvious. I felt like AB got one, had one going to the rim. They're in rotation. And then Lexi's, I felt like equally, we talk about, coming into the path, and it was an offensive player veering into the defensive player's path.
But this is exactly where Indiana showed they were built differently. A weaker team would have cracked under the weight, dropped their heads, complained about the unfairness, and eventually folded. Not the Fever. Their symbol of defiance came in the form of none, other than Lexi Hull. Think about it. How often do you witness a player, who many believed shouldn't even be on the floor, nearly flip the entire script of a playoff battle? That's precisely what Hull managed in these last few games. Coming off a painful back injury suffered in Game 1, she entered every matchup listed as questionable. Her pre-game warm-ups looked stiff, her movements hesitant, and it seemed like she'd barely last a few minutes, maybe as a placeholder. But instead, Hull didn't just show up. She turned those nights into her own stage, a gritty showcase of resilience, toughness, and sheer willpower. It was the kind of performance fans will still be talking about long after this series fades into history.
You have drawn the most offensive foul in a W this year, including the playoff. How are you able to do that?
I'm just trying to defend as hard as I can, and there's only certain screens you're allowed to set, so just trying to trail them, and that's all I can really say.
16 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks, and even a steal. Lexi Hull stuffed the stat sheet in every possible way. And she did it while shooting a scorching 6 for 10 from the floor, including 3 enormous triples that felt like oxygen tanks, reviving Indiana every single time Vegas tried to steal momentum. Those shots weren't just statistics. They were lifelines, momentum shifters that tied her with a Fever playoff record across 2 games, giving her 8 total threes, a milestone nobody expected from a player fighting through relentless back pain. And in the heart of all that chaos, Hull's 16 points stood tall as a career playoff high, a shining performance when her team needed it most.
Boston has the mismatch on Lloyd. Help comes. Kick out. Hull will fire. And hit from 3. Last 2 positions inside from Indiana. Smith tied up by Hull. And a jump ball between Smith and Hull.
What made Hull's performance unforgettable wasn't simply the numbers on the stat sheet. It was the gritty, relentless way she earned them. Every single possession felt like a war zone. Loose balls turned into violent collisions, rebounds into full-on wrestling matches. And through it all, Hull never once backed down. The cameras caught her grimacing in pain multiple times, but even then, she fought through, boxing out opponents who were bigger, stronger, and far healthier than she was. She threw herself on the floor for loose balls, sacrificed her body crashing the glass, and still had the composure to step back and drill threes on the other end. Each one of her plays wasn't just about adding points. They pumped life back into the Fever every time biased officiating tried to drain the fight out of them.
On the left side of the floor, just a clear out, letting Jackie Young go to work.
Jackie Young with 17 points. Boston to the corner, hole, catch, fire, and hit. Correct call. Evans dishes. Ray whips a pass inside. What a denial from Lexi Hall.
The Hull able to save the play.
12-point game, a little under 2.5 to go. Hull hits Indiana's first field goal of the quarter.
And that's exactly why the fans rallied behind her. The Gamebridge crowd wasn't blind. They knew the magnitude of what they were witnessing. A true warrior battling through pain simply because her team needed her most. Every rebound she ripped down, every jumper she buried reignited the arena, pulling the crowd right back into the fight. Even when the whistles tried to suffocate the energy, Hull's relentless effort became the heartbeat of Indiana's resistance, the spark that kept hope alive.
Back to Hull, wide open three is good.
The floor that she wants, doesn't it?
It does. Mitchell, connect. Here's Mitchell. Mitchell, one more. You bet.
That's exactly what makes the night cut even deeper. On the very same stage, Lexi Hull turned in perhaps the most remarkable playoff performance of her young career. Yet somehow, the conversation refused to center around her. It wasn't about her 16 hard-earned points or her fearless 10 rebounds that kept Indiana alive. Instead, all eyes shifted to the referees twisting the balance of the game. The moment that should have highlighted her resilience and courage was hijacked by controversy. In many ways, that feels like the perfect mirror of the Fever themselves, always underestimated, constantly pushed to the margins, but still refusing to back down and standing proudly tall. To frame it clearly, on one side was Hull, pouring out every ounce of energy, dragging her body through visible pain just to lift her teammates higher. On the other side stood Wilson, the league's so-called MVP, nearly invisible in the critical moments, sustained only by a parade of whistles that Indiana was never granted. That sharp contrast defines the entire narrative. One squad earning everything through sweat, sacrifice, and heart, while the other was carried forward on the shoulders of officials who looked far more invested in shielding the Aces brand than in allowing the Fever's relentless fight to truly shine.
Offensive foul, practically a football check, and the Aces score. So now the Aces cut it to 2, and then A'ja Wilson sets an illegal screen, and they tied things up. And then Lexi Hall gets called for a foul for doing nothing when they just had 2 illegal screens they didn't call. All right, so this is fair. Same thing happens on the other side, but they don't call a foul for Kelsey Mitchell. So Leah Boston gets called for this foul for getting her arm grabbed, but Stephanie White can't challenge. They won't let her. That's the second time this game they didn't let her have her challenge. And then A'ja Wilson starts acting like a big baby.
Imagine the scene. The league's most decorated star, the reigning MVP, going nearly 3 full quarters without even scratching the scoreboard. That was A'ja Wilson in Game 3. She started the night with a smooth, confident three-pointer that looked like the opening act of a dominant performance. Instead, it became her only real highlight of the entire first half. By halftime, her numbers were nothing short of shocking: 1-4, 11 from the floor. The kind of stat line that would embarrass even a rookie clinging to a 10-day contract. When it was over, she crawled her way to just 6 makes on 20 attempts, finishing with a hollow 13 points on 24 shots. Let's not sugarcoat it, that's dreadful. Not merely below her usual MVP standards, but downright unacceptable for any starting caliber WNBA player. Instead of attacking the paint, using her size and strength to impose her will like fans expect, Wilson drifted to the perimeter, settling for awkward fadeaways and desperate mid-range attempts. She looked visibly shaken by Aaliyah Boston's suffocating, relentless defense. And then, right when Indiana clawed within 3 points, here came the whistle. A soft, baffling foul call that gifted Wilson another chance. Nobody in the arena seemed to understand it. Yet the timing said everything. It was the third quarter, the Aces were wobbling. and suddenly the officials stepped in to steady the ship. The Aces went up by 3. And once again the whistle came. Not for contact. Not for anything real, but another phantom foul gifted to Aya Wilson. That wasn't a foul, and everyone watching knew it. Moments later, the Fever were hit with yet another soft call, one that sucked the air out of their momentum. By the time the game wound down, the pattern was undeniable. Indiana had built a 6-point cushion, ready to take control, but a parade of questionable whistles flipped everything upside down. And of course, to seal it, another foul handed to Wilson. Again, not a foul by any stretch. The irony? Ball don't lie. Wilson bricked 11 straight shots during the night, struggling mightily while looking completely out of rhythm. Vegas didn't win because their star played like an MVP. Far from it. What made fans furious was the fact that even with Wilson disappearing for nearly 3 quarters, the Aces still walked away with the victory. Not because of her dominance, but because every outside force seemed tilted in their direction. Credit where it's due. Jackie Young stepped into the spotlight with an ice-cold performance, dropping 25 points and burying dagger jumpers whenever Indiana clawed back. Her fearless shot-making carried Las Vegas across the finish line, while the Fever were left fighting both the Aces and the officials. Chelsea Gray chipped in with a calm, steady 15 points, rescuing the Aces' offense whenever it stalled out. Meanwhile, Nalissa Smith, who's had stretches of inconsistency all season, stepped up with perfectly timed plays that arrived exactly when Las Vegas needed them most. So, while Wilson was busy clanking shot after shot, it was her teammates, combined with the steady hand of the referees, who stitched together just enough of a cushion to keep the scoreboard tilted safely their way. What makes the whole thing sting even more is how the media chose to spin it afterward. Wilson's box score was screaming inefficiency, glaring at anyone who bothered to look. Yet, countless outlets dressed it up with convenient platitudes about her all-around impact. A rebound here, a block there, a couple of assists sprinkled in. Suddenly the narrative didn't look so ugly. Others quickly shifted gears, praising the Aces' overall depth instead of acknowledging what really happened. And in all that sugarcoating, the central truth got lost. The real reason Wilson struggled in the first place. Aaliyah Boston's relentless physical defense that forced her into uncomfortable shots and stripped away her rhythm from start to finish. Aaliyah Boston. Possession after possession, she turned the paint into a fortress, sealing off driving lanes, denying space, and forcing Wilson into one awkward, low-percentage shot after another. When a reigning league MVP shoots barely 30% on 20 attempts, that isn't just an off night. It's the definition of elite defensive execution. That's a superstar being shut down, plain and simple. Yet instead of shining the spotlight where it belonged, on Boston's dominance, the narrative bent itself backwards, scrambling to protect Wilson's fragile reputation. And it wasn't only on defense. Working alongside Hull, Boston found ways to punish Vegas on the other end too. Hull drew attention, Boston slipped free, and with a strong, composed finish, she laid it in. Another example of her complete impact on both ends of the court. Even then, Wilson somehow managed to leave a mark, but not in ways that actually command respect. Look closely, and you'll see it. Whistles bailing her out. Not basketball brilliance creating those moments. Elbows flying under the basket. Undercuts during box outs. Wild arms swinging dangerously into Indiana players. And somehow, almost none of it was ever punished. Yet despite all that, she's still painted as the victim. To top it off, Becky Hammond had the audacity to step to the microphone post-game and complain that Wilson only earned a single free throw in 38 minutes. The irony couldn't be louder. Las Vegas has been living at the foul line this entire series, practically handed free points on a silver platter. When you're already swimming in freebies, turning around and crying about not getting enough whistles isn't just laughable, it's downright insulting to the fans, to the game, and to the Fever's effort. The truth is simple, and it can't be twisted. Indiana did their job. They locked in, stayed disciplined, and bottled up Aya Wilson in a way that exposed her struggles for the whole league to see. Indiana executed their defensive game plan to perfection, with Boston fearlessly leading the charge. And still, the Fever walked away empty-handed, not because they were outplayed, but because the officiating made sure Las Vegas never paid the price for Wilson's endless brickfest. That's why this Aces victory rings hollow. This wasn't a superstar dragging her team through adversity. This was a team rescued by whistles and secondary scores while their so-called MVP was completely neutralized. Call it what it really is, not dominance, but a carefully protected escape. Even the post-game narrative sounded absurd. To suggest Wilson got hit all night while shooting a single free throw in 38 minutes is laughable. Everyone saw the game. Everyone saw the calls. And no amount of spin can hide it to the end of the day. It wasn't just the loss that left such a bitter taste. It was the officiating circus that stole the spotlight from the players who actually earned it. That's why Stephanie White finally snapped. No sugarcoating, no holding back, just raw truth about a league failing its own integrity. She refused to toe the company line. In her post-game interview, Stephanie White finally said out loud what every player, every fan, and every analyst has been screaming for months. The WNBA doesn't need another memo or a half-hearted apology whispered behind closed doors. It needs a full-scale, public investigation into the state of refereeing. A real reckoning, out in the open. Her words cut with raw frustration. I think it's pretty egregious what's been happening to us the last few games. You look at a -31 free throw discrepancy, and maybe I could understand it if we were just standing around chucking threes. But that's not who we are. We're attacking the rim, possession after possession. And the disrespect we're getting right now as a team has been absolutely unbelievable. It's disappointing, truly disappointing. White's outburst wasn't just emotion, it was a demand for accountability. A call for fairness in a league that can't grow if its integrity keeps being undermined. Her frustration was impossible to hide. It was written all over her face. White has faced battles as a player and endured tough losses as a coach, but this felt different. This wasn't just basketball. This was her team, her players, being denied the fair stage they had earned. Lexie Hull risking her body on every possession. Aaliyah Boston fighting through relentless triple teams. Kelsey Mitchell battling constant defensive pressure. Yet, instead of being celebrated, they were robbed by inconsistent officiating. White didn't mince words. Officiating isn't just inconsistent. It's actively compromising the integrity of the game. And she's absolutely right. Look at it closely. How many times over the past 2 seasons has Caitlin Clark been hammered with no whistle, only to see the same type of contact rewarded on the other end? How many times has Aaliyah Boston fought tooth and nail for position, only to get slapped with phantom fouls? How often are players like Hull or Mitchell punished simply for hustling, while opponents flop their way to easy free points? This series wasn't an anomaly. It was the ugly culmination of a problem that has been brewing all season. Exposing a league-wide pattern that refuses to be ignored, here's Boston back at home, setting herself up perfectly. Mitchell breaks free, lays it in. It's been a while since she got a clean look, but she makes it count. Every possession matters. Stephanie White demanding accountability goes far beyond the fever. This is about protecting the future of the league itself. Because here's the truth. Without Caitlin Clark, without the fever, without the surge of new fans filling arenas and smashing TV ratings, the WNBA wouldn't be in this spotlight. And yet, instead of safeguarding that growth, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert sits silent while referees tilt games, handing the defending champions lifelines they absolutely did not earn. Fans see it. Social media is buzzing with it. Analysts are pointing it out. The only ones pretending otherwise are tucked away in the league office, hoping the noise eventually dies down. But thanks to Stephanie White, it won't. Her call for a full-scale investigation isn't just frustration, it's a demand for fairness, transparency, and the integrity that the league claims to stand for. This is the very first real, no-holds-barred demand for accountability from someone inside the machine. Stephanie White isn't just venting. She's sending a clear, bold message. And if Engelbert continues to ignore it, the message to fans becomes undeniable. The league doesn't care about fairness, integrity, or the hard work of its players. All it seems to care about is protecting its chosen teams. No matter how blatantly the system is tilted, here's the bottom line. White's fearless call has already redirected the spotlight where it rightfully belongs, on the corrupt officiating that's been quietly dragging this league down for far too long. If there's even a shred of justice left in basketball, her words will ignite the conversation. forcing the WNBA to finally confront its dirtiest secret and clean house before the credibility of the entire league is irreparably damaged. And now, it's over to you. What do you think? Will the WNBA finally step up and fix this mess? Or will fans continue to be sidelined while the favorites get free passes? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear every opinion. Smash that like button if you agree. Hit subscribe to stay in the loop on every explosive breakdown. And turn on all notifications so you never miss a single shocking moment. Don't just watch. Take action. Click the video on your screen right now and join us as we break down every hidden story, every controversial call, and every player fight that the league doesn't want you to see. Your front row seat to the truth starts here, and it's only getting hotter from here on out.